Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really close look at Kashmir. It's a region, often described as one of the most beautiful, historically rich, but also politically sensitive places in the world.
That's definitely true. It covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, and we've got some great material here. The idea is to sort of unpack everything, the geography, the history, its culture, the conflict, and crucially, how India, Pakistan, and China see it.
Right. Those different perspectives are key.
Our goal really is just to give you a clear, engaging understanding of what is, let's face it, a complex but fascinating area.
Okay.
Okay, so where do we start? Maybe the geography.
Yeah, that makes sense. What immediately stands out is just how crucial its position is.
Yeah.
Geographically, think of it right at the northern tip of the Indian subcontinent.
Right up there?
Exactly. And that location puts it in a unique, sometimes pretty challenging spot. It shares borders with Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, but also with Pakistan-administered Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, and then the Chinese-controlled areas, Aksai-Chin and the Shikskam Valley.
Wow, so it's a real meeting point.
It really is,
Yeah.
where these major powers converge.
Yeah.
And that has profoundly shaped its history, its story.
Absolutely. And when you picture that location, you immediately think Himalayas.
Yes.
Our source talks about breathtaking mountains, rivers, and valleys, and that feels, spot on. You get a sense of how this dramatic landscape must have influenced everything.
Totally. The landscape is inseparable from its identity and history. And speaking of history, its roots go incredibly deep.
Deeper than many might think.
Oh, definitely. The source mentions ancient Hindu texts, like the Nilamata Purana, connections to figures like Kashyapa Rishi. It's a place that saw Buddhism and Shaivism flourish.
Before Islam arrived.
Yeah, before Sufi Islam arrived later and became a really significant influence. What's fascinating is how these different traditions layered over time. It created this unique cultural blend.
So not just one replacing another, but a layering effect.
Precisely. Then, if we move forward from those ancient times, you see a succession of rulers. First Hindu and Buddhist kings, then Muslim rulers from around the 14th century.
Okay.
And then a big shift in 1586, Emperor Akbar brings Kashmir into the Mughal Empire.
The Mughals.
Yeah.
And the source mentions it became a summer paradise for them.
Exactly, because of its beauty. And that tells you something about its allure, its strategic importance. Even then, it wasn't just pretty. Their investments, the gardens, that sort of thing, actually laid some groundwork for its later reputation.
As a tourist destination, which continues today.
Yeah, that Mughal connection is significant. But the story doesn't stop there. After the Mughals, control shifts again, Afghans, then the Sikhs under Ranjit Singh,
Yeah.
and finally the Dogra dynasty under Maharaja Gulab Singh. All this constant change sets the stage for the really pivotal events later on.
It creates this backdrop of diverse rulers and maybe a certain degree of established autonomy under the Dogras, which makes what happened in 1947 so critical.
Exactly. Which brings us to that huge turning point, the 1947 partition.
The source outlines it clearly. The princely states had to choose India or Pakistan.
And for Kashmir, it wasn't simple. You had a majority Muslim population, but a Hindu ruler, Maharaja Hari Singh.
And he initially wanted to stay neutral, right?
He did, but that neutrality didn't last. There was a tribal invasion from Pakistan,
Okay.
and that basically forced his hand. He signed the Instrument of Accession with India.
And that document is, it's central to India's claim.
It's the legal basis, yes, but signing it immediately led to conflict.
The first India-Pakistan War, 1947-48.
Correct. And the UN stepped in, brokered a ceasefire, which divided Kashmir. This created what eventually became the line of control, the Lost Sea.
Right, the Lost Sea.
Yeah.
And subsequent wars in 65-71 and then Kargil in 99, they essentially solidified that line.
They did. But it's crucial, as you mentioned, it's not a formal international border. It's a military line, a de facto border, which really highlights the unresolved nature of the dispute.
Absolutely. And tied into that unresolved status was Kashmir's special constitutional position for decades.
Article 370.
Yes, Article 370 granting autonomy and Article 35A about permanent residence and property rights.
Exactly. These were fundamental. Article 370 allowed Jammu and Kashmir its own constitution, its own flag, considerable control over internal matters, except defense, foreign affairs, communications, those stayed with India.
And 35A.
That protected the rights of permanent residents, particularly around owning property and getting state jobs. These were defining features until August 5th, 2019.
A date that really stands out. Our source calls it historic and controversial.
Extremely controversial. The Indian government revoked Article 370 and split the state into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh.
And the reactions were, well, mixed is an understatement.
Very much so. Welcomed by some in India as necessary for integration, but heavily criticized by others, and certainly by Pakistan and China.
The stated aims were things like aligning laws with the rest of India, maybe boosting the economy.
Right. Those were the official justifications. But it fundamentally altered the political and legal landscape.
Okay, so amidst all this political history, we absolutely have to talk about the culture.
Oh, definitely. It's incredibly rich and diverse. The source lists the languages Kashmiri, Dogri, Urdu, Ladakhi, Gojri, Hindi, English. It's a real mix.
Reflecting the different communities and the religions, too.
Yeah, Islam is the majority in the Kashmir Valley, Hinduism predominant in Jammu, and Buddhism strong in Ladakh.
And this mix has created some unique cultural elements, hasn't it?
It really has. You got the Sufi traditions in the valley, those world-famous Kashmiri shawls and carpets.
The craftsmanship is incredible.
Isn't it? And the food was one cuisine. Plus, this overarching idea of Kashmiriyat.
Kashmiriyat. What does that really mean?
It's sort of a unique cultural ethos developed over centuries, blending Sufi Islam, Hinduism, local traditions, emphasizing tolerance, a shared identity, even amidst the differences. It's quite special.
That sounds, yeah, very special. And it's this blend of beauty and culture that leads to the name Paradise on Earth.
That's the famous moniker. And the source lists the key spots: Srinagar, Gulmarg, Pahalgam, Dal Lake, Sonamarg.
Just hearing the names paints a picture.
Doesn't it? And you have those iconic images. The houseboats on Dal Lake, the shikaras gliding past.
And the kangri, those little fire pots for winter.
Yeah, part of the unique local culture. But of course, despite all this beauty, the current situation involves significant security challenges.
The source mentions a heavy military presence,
which is linked to the insurgency that started back in 1989. Now, the source does say activity is significantly reduced recently.
But the tensions are still there, presumably.
Yes, the underlying issues, socioeconomic factors, political aspirations, cross-border influences, they likely still contribute to tension, even if violence levels are lower, according to the source.
But it also mentions positive developments since 2019.
It does. Improvements in infrastructure, development projects, and, interestingly, an increase in tourism.
Suggesting a push towards normalcy. Progress.
That seems to be the direction things are moving in, or at least the aim, alongside the ongoing security situation.
Okay, so what about the wider world, the international perspectives?
Well, the main positions are quite entrenched. India sees Kashmir as an integral part of the country, full stop.
Whereas Pakistan
disputes India's claim and advocates for self-determination for the Kashmiri people. They often cite old UN resolutions calling for a plebiscite, a vote.
Though the feasibility of that has always been debated.
Heavily debated, yes. And then you have China, which has its own claims, particularly in parts of Ladakh, like Aksai Chin.
Yeah.
So they're another major player.
Adding another layer of complexity. And the UN.
The UN still officially considers Kashmir a disputed territory. Numerous resolutions were passed historically, but its active role in resolving the dispute now is largely symbolic.
Right. So to sort of pull this together, the source highlights some key takeaways.
Yeah, like the dual capitals, Jammu in winter, Srinagar in summer, reflecting the climate.
And the major rivers, Chelum, Chenab, Indus, vital lifelines.
Absolutely. And the key industries. Tourism, of course, those intricate handicrafts and horticulture, apples, saffron.
The big economic drivers. What's really striking, looking back at everything we've discussed, is how interconnected it all is. The geography, the long history, the partition, the conflict, the culture, the international views.
You can't really isolate one element.
Yeah.
They all feed into each other. It paints a picture of a place shaped by both, incredible natural gifts and some really deep, persistent challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive on Kashmir, we've touched on the stunning landscapes, the historical shifts, that pivotal partition moment, and the conflicts it sparked, the resilient culture.
And those differing international viewpoints that continue to shape things.
Exactly. It's undeniably complex, undeniably sensitive.
It really is. And it leaves you with a thought, doesn't it? For a place that is so, genuinely blessed with natural beauty and such a deep layered culture, how do all these historical threads and the ongoing geopolitics keep impacting the daily lives of the people there?
And what does the future hold? What possibilities are there?
A question to ponder. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.